Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about a very important topic, and that is the question that we've all heard: is disputing our irrational beliefs, the core fear driving our particular OCD cycles, necessary? And the question is, it depends. If you're looking at someone who has mild OCD, someone where it might not be completely latched in the chronic level, how it was for me, Rob, and many of the other moderators and people that we work with, going with uncertainty, leaving thoughts there and distancing yourselves from those thoughts can be a very, very vital technique for those type of people. But when it's latched in the background 24/7, whether it's in the forefront of your mind, whether it's, in the background, whether you're at work or with your loved one, out to dinner, playing golf, it's just in the background lingering, more than likely we'll have to go into the context of the thought, and I'm going to explain what that means in this video. Before I go any further, please subscribe, like that video, share it with friends and family members. Maybe your mom wants to learn more about OCD. Maybe your friends are like, hey, what are you dealing with? And you don't really want to explain to them in a compulsive manner, and you say, hey, watch this video by Nick, and he can break these certain things down and, how we go about disputing our core fears, because this goes way beyond just OCD recovery. These are philosophies and tools for life, especially when real things happen, which I'm sure they will. So, this is the question, isn't it? Is disputing your core fear necessary? And as I said, it depends. Now, we're going to go into the side of chronic OCD. Yes. I never want to say 100% certain, but damn, we're close to 99% and up for most people that will need to break down their core fear. So let's use myself for an example. 26 months ago, I was completely stuck with sensory motor. Sensory motor was my entire life. It took over every single aspect of my life to the point where it was all I could think about 24/7 was my saliva and my swallowing sensations. Now I go for months at a time without even really thinking about it. It's kind of insane when I think about where I was. So one of the best quotes that Rob used, it's, when you're on the top of Everest, right? It's very hard to imagine what it's like to be in a sunny beach because that feeling is so consuming. Well, when you reach recovery and you've made tremendous progress, it's hard to imagine what it was like to be back in that position. This is exactly where I am today with sensory motor OCD. It is a fleeting thing in my life. I don't think about it whatsoever. Even when I'm talking about it with other sensory motor sufferers and explaining, what worked for me, why breaking down my irrational beliefs, which I will cover here in a few seconds, was so empowering for me, was because even though I did all the exposures necessary, I brought down my avoidance behaviors. I no longer was playing video games. I was going throughout my life, living life on my terms, but sensory motor still seemed to be latched in the background. It's because I still was scared of that worst case scenario. And until I broke down that worst case scenario, I knew it wasn't going to unlatch. We see this with severe harm OCD, POCD, any type of chronic OCD where there is a fear, maybe even, a fear of being a bad person or societal rejection. Those things are not going to unlatch with just uncertainty for the majority of cases. For many chronic OCD sufferers who are stuck with chronic shame and guilt and chronic anxiety, in some form latched or switching between symptoms, disputing your core belief is more than likely necessary. Now, I did a tremendously good article that I posted today on our Facebook group, which is 16.2 thousand members, breaking down, what is the difference between engaging with your thoughts versus disputing with your thoughts. A lot of people tell me, Nick, I don't need to dispute with my thoughts because that's engaging. That's a common misconception. This is broken down in many of the L's books. It's not about walking around all day as an OCD sufferer because the books weren't made for OCD sufferers. So we had to kind of take the philosophies of REBT and Stoicism and kind of fine tune them for OCD recovery sufferers. Because a lot of the stuff that Ellis suggests can't actually be used for an OCD sufferer in the way that he explains it. As walking around, if you have to tell yourself 1,000 times a day, which he says in his books, we know that's not the case for OCD sufferers. It wasn't geared towards an OCD disorder, but, we had to kind of modify that along the way and see what worked best for OCD sufferers. So, what is the main fear? But in all OCD type, whatever your fear is, it is the fear of being stuck forever and the fear of being stuck with chronic symptoms forever. And when we break that down through a rational outlook and ask ourselves, what's so bad about being anxious? What's so bad about being stuck with a symptom, a sensation? Why am I viewing it so catastrophically? And obviously there's cultural backgrounds and beliefs that's been instilled, but now as an adult, as my age, at 32 years old, it is my responsibility to look at the beliefs I'm holding and break them down through a rational lens, through RBT, through Stoicism, through the works of Ellis, reading stuff like Man's Search for Meaning, which is a book on the reading list, and looking at how lucky I am to have, live in this particular time period and stuff like that. So it's very, very important to look at these type of things. So again, is disputing your irrational belief necessary? Depends. If you're chronically stuck, it's something you will more than likely need to do. A lot of people might be saying we don't need to go into the context of the thought. I would disagree with this. The reason why we usually do need to go into the context of the thought at its base, the core, the root of the cycle is the fear. That is the thing. Even if symptoms are present, your belief about those symptoms exaggerates and adds a catastrophizing another onion layer on your suffering, which makes it a little bit even more difficult to move towards recovery. So let's go through your worst case scenario. Let's say you had anxiety, 20-30% background for the rest of your life. Most people, understandably so, because humans don't like suffering, would freak out over that. I understand, it makes sense. But when we break that down rationally and we see that it's not as bad as we make it out to be, it's not saying we agree with it. Agreement doesn't mean acceptance. Another misconception, understandably so. It's easy, those lines blend. They kind of wave like this in and out. What's the difference between acceptance and what's the difference between agreement? I'll do another video on that and why, it's not agreement. It's completely different. So in order to really unlatch, really truly get past the chronic suffering, the chronic anxiety, the chronic shame and guilt, we usually do have to break down those irrational beliefs. That is what I had to do for myself and many other people that have had to do along their OCD recovery journey. If you look at someone like Jade knew that she was never, ever, ever going to get underneath those core fears unless she broke those things down through RBT and rational motive behavioral therapy, looking at Stoicism and stuff like that, through the works of Dr. Albert Ellis and other people on the reading list. Not everyone will need to do this, but if you're stuck at the chronic level and those sensations are present 24 hours a day, whether in the forefront of your mind or blasting in the background, this is something that you'll more than likely need to do. This is what I needed to do. Sensory motor can be absolutely all-consuming. It's almost like you're being internally tortured all day long. But that belief about this should not be happening to me. This isn't fair. I don't deserve this. Look at everyone else, living these easy lives, which you have no idea what people are really going through. It's just a story you tell yourself in your life. Once we start to break those down, once we start to realize that the only thing we can control is our outlook and our reaction to a degree in the beginning, it's hard to say, automatically. But over time, we can learn to be more comfortable with discomfort, break down our irrational beliefs, and move forward a robust level of recovery where we have our main philosophical outlook on life is unconditional self-life, other acceptance. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy and have a great day.